on. I think it's streaming. I think we're live. What is happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic Saturday. Chances are, if you are watching this as it airs on Saturday, then your Saturday did not go quite as well as you would hope. So, didn't really have an idea for what I wanted to put as the topic for this show. So much going on, so much rattling around in my head, so many funny things that I wanted to talk about. I typically don't get wrapped up in like other people's YouTube channels. I don't even, to be honest, I don't watch a lot of YouTube unless it's, friends of mine's channels. It could be Demonology, Racer X, a couple of other guys, but I really don't pay a lot of attention to other people's channels. So anyway, we might get into one of the videos, the latest video that was posted up by one of the other channels, and or at least one of our Mopar brethren, one of our fellas got a little bit embarrassed. Anyway, getting away from that, lots been going on lately. Been trying to put up a little bit more content for you guys, just in terms of ride-along videos, things like that. Demonology, my man. I damn near called you a minute ago. Oh, wish I would have too, man. Everybody say what's up to Demonology. Plaid to fame. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about what I've been posting up lately, some of the draggy stuff, some of the things that I've been noticing as far as trends, where the market's going to be moving in the future. So many different things that I wanted to talk about. So I wanted to open up to you guys early on and get you guys, if y'all have some questions for y'all early birds, let me know if you got something on your mind, and then we can start chatting about some other stuff as it pops up into my mind cells here, because I got so many goofy things that I've just been laughing at lately. So getting into it, Chandelier is doing really well. I was running 1042 last night, little stock boost, terrorizing the drag strip. No news yet as far as if there's going to be any drag strips opening up or anything like that down here. Probably not. The way that things are going, we're probably a few years at least away from having a drag strip even be thought about or in the planning stages for the Houston area in terms of quarter mile. So we'll see how that goes, where that goes, but I just don't know that we're going to have anything other than 8th mile. So I wanted to get y'all's idea on 8th mile. What do you think about 8th mile? You big fan of it? Don't like it? Like it? The thing is that 8th mile for a lot of people is a lot more relatable. I mean, it's stoplight to stoplight, literally a block long, 660 feet. So there's that. Another thing is that a lot more folks have access to 8th mile tracks than quarter mile, so 8th mile times can actually be a little bit more familiar to them than quarter mile times. And then, of course, thirdly, Mopar life, right? I mean, Dodges lately, modern Mopars, are really hard to beat in the 8th mile. I mean, you can get around them in the quarter if you've got a lot of top-end horsepower, but usually, the Mopar is going to come out on top in the 8th mile. So you would think that would kind of play into the game plan. You'd think I'd be liking 8th mile a lot more than quarter. I'm just so used to quarter plus. That's what back in the day, magazines would test quarter mile. So, I'm more familiar with quarter mile racing, but would like to hear y'all's opinions on that as well. I'm always giving y'all mine. What's y'all's? Mr. Blacktop is in, got the fist bump. I like it. Again, Demonology checking in. What's up, my man? Tuxedo, what's up, buddy? Kobe's got the fist bump and the arm flex. I like it. Cal is saying, even Mr. Mason. What's up? Mr. Blacktop is checking in with Demonology. Rick's in. Pack is in. Demonology saying, call me anytime I got a lot going on, dude. Demonology saying, I love the 8th mile. Yeah. I'm going to start probably doing some 8th mile. Need to start getting used to the concept of doing 8th mile, I should say. One of the things that I like about quarter mile, though, if you go back and watch the drag video of me running Nathan's Red Eye, it's fun to see the difference in power when you're talking about a mid 9-second car versus a mid 10-second car. But it's interesting how close the race is right up until the point where that power really starts to take over. And you know, an 1/8 mile turns can the cool thing about 1/8 mile is that it's over quicker, which means that the launch is so much more important. That 60 foot is that much more important. It's twice as important because it's half the distance. Everything is much more important except for power. Two cars that are fairly close, it's a driver's race, but in a quarter mile. But you can have a couple of cars that are fairly widely spaced in terms of power, and it's a little bit more of an even playing field when you're only racing that shorter distance. So I don't know. We'll see. I think I may warm up to it. Cody's asking, is a 10% drive pulley worth it? Yes, I believe it is. Rick's saying, yes, he does. His Hellcat with Netto Tri-5 radials and performance dip brace has wheel hop. Yes, it does. How can I get rid of wheel hop? Check your tire pressure. A lot of guys are running tire pressure that's too low on tires that do not need to be run at that low of pressure. The thing about the wheel hop with these cars is that if you try, I'll put it to like this. Let me guess. Pressure is probably around 18 PSI, 20 PSI in those Nettos at the drag strip. Or if you're on the street, you might be running them at 25. These cars don't like anything less than about 26, 27 on the street. For some of the softer compound tires, like the ET Street SS. The Nettos, I've found, don't like anything less than about 30 PSI. So you're trying to take advantage of having the stickier tire, but the problem is that there's no compliance in the sidewall. So you have a stickier tire that's trying to bite, and it kind of hooks, but then it slips, creates a resonance. Next thing you know, you get wheel hop. So check your tire pressure. Don't try to run super low tire pressure on the street. Causes cupping when the tire cups. Let me do it like this for you. This is another issue with 20-inch wheel and tire combinations that guys just really don't think about too often. So if this piece of paper represents the footprint of the tire, underinflation will make it cup. And if you think this is an exaggeration, I've done pattern testing on these tires up to 35 PSI, from 18 to 35 PSI. And it is notable the train tracks on each tire on the outside when you underinflate them. What'll happen is that when that takes place, then your footprint is no longer stable. You need to have a flat footprint. You also have to remember that you do not have a flat contact patch. As you accelerate, that tire, because of the suspension, is going to articulate, which means that your footprint of that tire, you're not using the whole thing. It's only about that much, and you're putting all that pressure on the inside. So check your tires, always check the inside. If that is the case, what you need to do is, if you have too low of an air pressure, again, you're concentrating all that force on a smaller footprint, and it's causing it to get deformed. That can cause wheel hop as well. So check your tire pressure, go from there. Demon is saying 1/8 mile is a driver's race. Yes, it is. And it is tough to gun down a car in the 1/8 mile. I mean, real tough. Not much real estate to play with. Oh, hang on a second. Catalyst 99, thank you very much. Asking, do I recommend a certain card jack for swapping out drag radials at the track? I noticed some of them are quite expensive, but don't want too cheap either. Harbor Freight, baby. Everybody's got this jack. In fact, I've got one out here. It's that blue and silver aluminum jack. Works extremely well. Make sure you get you some pucks. All you got to do is order up some hockey pucks. For the frame rail up front, if you're going to be swapping anything up front, you always want to make sure you have your hockey pucks. But in back, just use your jacking pucks that are on the car already. And Harbor Freight, I think it's made by Pittsburgh, blue and gray aluminum jack. Everybody's got one. Some guys have two of them, and they take a beating too. So, but that is the jack that I would go with. And they're portable. They're easy to run around with. Oh, Boost is saying he loves the 1/8 mile. He's running a Mopar 1/8 mile race tomorrow. Very nice. Tux is asking how the missus is doing. She's doing well. Thank you. You're saying I'm old school quarter mile. Love the top end. High gear ride. I like it. Rick's saying just don't think I get too excited about 1/8 mile. I don't know, man. And Demon, I was saying less wear and tear on your car and 8 speeds are safer. So here's the thing: quarter mile. I'll use my piece of paper here. Remember the old bell curve? You know, a little bit here, a little bit there, a lot in the middle. 1/8 mile represents the feet of that bell curve. And what I mean by that is this: if you've got a slow car, let's say you've got a car that, or a truck or whatever, and it's a 16-second, 15-second, whatever vehicle, right? The thing is that that vehicle in the 1/8 mile is going to get done with the 1/8 mile in basically 10 seconds. So it's you're having all the fun of a quarter mile in a way in the span of 10 seconds. If you've got something that is really fast on the other end of that bell curve, the thing is if you've got a car that's in the low 6s, mid 5s, something like that, you're starting to get really fast at that point. Your ET, or rather your trap speed, not your terminal speed, but your trap speed, the quarter mile, is starting to get up around, 145, 155 miles an hour. At about that point, it's getting kind of hard to slow the thing down. And you're putting a lot of stress on that car on the back half of the track. That's a lot of load, a lot of time under peak cylinder pressure, and that's typically where cars fail. Is they'll fail at about the 1,000-foot mark. So the idea is if you've got something extremely fast, 1/8 mile can be a little bit safer. You're only in the throttle for 5.5 seconds, 4 seconds, whatever, and then you're out of it and you've got shutdown area ahead of you. Not as much wear and tear, not as much time under full throttle, which means not as much time for something to go wrong. Not to say that it's not hell on parts. I mean, you're still launching the car, you're still going through gears, but you're not staying in it on the back half, and it's the back half of the track that you will notice catastrophic engine failure on the back half of the track. You might blow up a transmission or a rear end or something like that at the starting line. That's usually not too bad. It's when the engine lets go and very slippery dinosaur juices start getting flown all over the place at 140, 130, 150 miles an hour. That's when you got yourself a little bit of a conundrum in terms of the tires start misunderstanding what traction means. Scott saying he took the advice, ran 22 in his Hoosiers last night. Much better than when I was at 18. Very good. Rick saying he's at 32, 33 PSI. That is correct. PSI. Cody's saying, Demonology, you're moving into Demon? Yeah, you are. And again, Catalyst, thank you very much, buddy. Never had him under 30. I don't know, man. Contact patch looks good. Yeah, I don't know, man. If you're getting a lot of wheel hop and you've got the diff brace, you've got the tires at the right pressure, next thing I would start looking at is rear end alignment. That'd be the next thing I would look at, because mine has 0 wheel hop whatsoever. The only time I'll ever run into any wheel hop is if I'm running Mickey Thompsons that are fairly low. I gotta think about this. Mickey Thompsons that are fairly low on the wear bars, and if I've got maybe some sketchy track prep. But even those tires on the street won't wheel hop. Kobe's saying, I've gotten 2 of those jacks. Man, I'm telling you, everybody's got at least one, right? I mean, if you don't have one, I just don't know. I don't know that I can talk to you. I mean, they're like the best jack ever, and I use them for everything, so big fan of those things. Rick's saying when the tires are hot, they're at about 37 PSI. Yeah, I wish I could answer you, man, unless, like I say, unless there's an alignment issue or something. And these are these the Tri-5Rs? Hang on a second. I mean, BMR lower control arms maybe would help, but I would definitely just have the alignment checked, make sure everything's right. Demonology saying I run 540 at 126. Yeah, that's right about in the wheelhouse that is fun in the 8th mile. I know that when I've run here's the problem. Once you start getting into the 9087 range, that's when things start getting kind of creepy on the back half of the track, or can get a little bit nutty on the back half of the track. Because you have to remember, at that rate of acceleration, not only are you putting a lot of strain on engine, drivetrain, everything else, there's tires to consider. And what would normally not break your tires loose on the back half of the track, dust or somebody's dripping a little bit of something on the back half of the track at those power levels, they can. And that's typically where they'll start leaking, is at the back half of the track. So at least it seems that way. Want to say, new to the channel, I like your content and advice. Thank you very much. I'm new Scat Pack Hunter. What would you recommend mods wise to hit 500 to the wheel? Well, okay, so on what dyno? All right, are we talking about a dyno pack? Are we talking about a Mustang dyno? Are we talking about a dyno jet that's an eddy current? Or are we talking about a dyno jet that's an inertia style dyno jet like a 248C dyno? 500 horsepower is not 500 horsepower. It's not what you think it is. And what I have tried to, and you'll pick up on this after a while watching the show, because I've worked at a shop. I've worked at a couple of shops, and I'm in and around this stuff all the time. And guys start getting wrapped up in horsepower numbers. Every dyno reads differently. Every dyno is going to read differently on different days because of the actual algorithm, the math that the dyno uses to read power. But more to the point, an eddy current dyno will read lower than an inertia style dyno. A dyno comp, which is an eddy current, is going to read higher than a Mustang dyno or a dyno jet, but it might read less than a dyno jet 248C, inertia style, the drum style. So what do you need to get 500 horsepower to the rear wheels? Well, first of all, let's just agree to what dyno that we're going to talk about. And we ain't talking about eddy current dynos right now. We're going to talk about a dyno jet 248C dyno. It's going to be the most quoted when guys are talking about, I made 500 to the wheels. Sure you did, Sparky, but the reality is that you didn't. But let's say you did. It's going to be on a 248. And what do you need? So you're going to need it's going to be a head, not heads, you're going to need a cam ported intake, larger throttle body, cam kit. So you're talking springs, push rods, stanky tie bars and collars, long tube headers, high flow cats, and somebody tuning it that knows what they are doing. Which cam do you want to go with? It depends. I don't like to recommend a whole lot of camshaft for these cars, because what you gain in drivability, I'm sorry, what you will gain in power, sometimes you'll lose in drivability, especially when these cars try to start pushing through lights, because running a different torque converter just wasn't an option. By the way, the advice that I'm giving you is based around running a stock torque converter. So just understand that. I don't really recommend playing with torque converters with these cars, especially cars that are driven on the street, not on the drag strip, stuff like that. So what cam do you want to go with? Because you're going to have to put a cam in it. That's just all there is to it. And there are a ton of different cams. All I'll tell you is this. I put cams together for guys. I put cams together for Pikes Performance. I put cams together for Dr. Differential Speed. I've also put cams together for some other folks that have asked me to not say anything about the cams that I put together for them. So I don't. I only deal with shops. I don't deal with individuals. But I'll give you some guidelines. The bigger is not the better when it comes to camshafts. Through Pikes Performance, I have a grind called a CD01 that was made somewhat famous with Racer X's buddy Quick Brick and that Charger of his that went 1120 at 121 or 122 miles an hour with a 157 60 foot at full weight. I know this because I drove the car. Although he drove it to the 1120, 1129, 1128. By the way, the shop is near Velocito, and some guys are apparently going out to have some fun in some imports, so y'all be safe, guys. Anyway, getting back to it, the cams that I would not go with are anything that is going to have a whole lot of chop to it, because that chop is going to mean that it's going to be kind of jerky at idle and it may try to push through a light. It's just a little bit annoying. So stick to a cam that's around 222, 224-ish on the intake side. Don't go above 230 on the exhaust side. Low intake center line somewhere around 108, 109. LSA around 114-ish. I don't like to go any wider than that with these cars. They start to run like shit. And the thing that holds it all together, though, is the tuner. You need to be going with somebody who speaks fluent Mopar and will listen to your needs and listen to what you want to do with this car. And look, if your goal is to make 500 horsepower, make sure that you're willing to put up with some of the things that come with running 500 horsepower. Choppy cams are nice, but they do get old after a while. Believe me. So stick with the recipe. You'll pretty much get there. And don't worry so much about the dyno number itself. Worry more about the overall gain. In fact, I don't know if I've got one of the dyno sheets around for his car. Anyway, I just got through moving some stuff around over here, and I don't have this folder that's got a bunch of dyno sheets. But anyway, any of those cams that I just mentioned, any of the cams that fall in line with the cams I just mentioned, are going to give you a solid gain across the board. But you have to remember, you're starting off at a very high place. You know, the old adage, or, you know, that question of, well, you know, how high is up, right? Well, you've already started pretty high. The 392 has a very aggressive cam in it from the factory. It's got unbelievably good heads in it from the factory. The intake is actually pretty good from the factory. So with some massaging of the intake, with the cam, with the long tubes, with the full kit, you'll get very close to that 500 horsepower mark. But I'm going to caution you, car to car to car, cam to cam to cam, each one will act a little bit differently. I've had cars that guys swear make 500 horsepower to the rear wheel show up on the dyno over at Alex Pike's dyno, strap it to the dyno, and it makes 455. Imagine their shock. So just know that that is a real thing and it does happen. So Chuck, thank you very much. Say his current stock numbers for the RT Shaker manual on street radials, 1350. That's not bad. 520 to 60. I'm hoping for Pro Charger, etc., get me in the 11s, and it will. Just practice, practice, practice. Get a drag pack on that thing, and you'll be real happy with it. That's a fun combination, by the way. Let's see. Sovereign saying, hey, B, what's up, man? Demonology. Sovereign saying, at Demonology, just finished watching the latest drop. I like it. Bruce saying, yo, Professor Mopar, what's up, man? I hope you and your family are doing well. Hope you and yours are doing well as well. Demonology's checking out. See you, man. I'll give you a shout tomorrow. Kobe saying, bad track prep? Possibly. Rick saying, wheel hop, street and strip. Car has 2,200 miles on it. Bought her new. Demonology's asking, will I need a new oil pan if I run 7s in the quarter mile? No, you won't. I mean, the oil pan that you have is fine. Obviously, if you're staying with stock displacement, you don't have to worry about clearancing the windage tray. But aside from that, no. I don't know of anybody that's gone with an aftermarket pan. You should be fine. The G-load's going to throw everything to the back, and your pickup's in the rear as well, so I wouldn't worry too much with that. But it's never a bad idea to go with a bigger pan, and the idea with that is to run a pan with a nice fat kick out at the bottom. And the reason why you want to do that is because when you hit the G-load, your oil is in your pan, you hit the G load and it all rocks to the back. We'll see how it comes up in the back as opposed to being down. If your counterweights are right here and now they're coming into here, you might have a little bit of windage, which is never a good thing. So the best way to answer that question is obviously go with the better oil pan before you put the car back together. If you put the car back together with the stock pan though, data log oil pressure. If you see a dip in oil pressure and then it comes back up as the car is going down the track, then it might be a good idea to take a look at a larger oil pan. The other reason why you might want to consider going with a larger oil pan is how hard the car launches. Now keep in mind, you are still throwing oil to the back and oil back to the pickup, but the car's going to rev up really fast. If you're going into the sevens, it's going to spool up pretty quickly, and that's going to be evacuating a lot of oil out of the pan and up into the cylinder heads, where it's going to take a minute to drain back. So again, if you can get an oil pan, it's not really for the capacity. You don't get a bigger oil pan for more oil capacity. You get a bigger oil pan so that it manages the flow of the oil a little bit better at launch. So keep that in mind. I haven't put a build together that is required or needed a bigger oil pan, but I would say that yours is probably encroaching on that pretty hard right now. But I'll put it like this: I haven't seen any modified cars run into any oil starvation issues because of the stock oil pump or stock oil pan. Rick's saying his car is a 2018 Hellcat. Yeah, man, I don't know. None of the cars that I'm running with are having any wheel hop issues, man. I don't know what to tell you. Again, pattern test them, see if one side looks like it's a little bit different than the other. I'm trying to think. I mean, like I say, I ran BMRs. That helped a little bit on Shalandra. We ran BMRs on the Demon. But everything else is running stock suspension bits. The only thing I can ask is this: how bad is the wheel hop? I mean, is it violent? Is it just a little, or is it pretty violent? Here's the other thing: make sure you installed your diff brace correctly. I don't know which diff brace you got, but if you got one of the performance ones that doesn't have the bushing and it's just the brace itself, just make sure that you didn't over tighten the two, I guess you'd call them like locator bolts underneath it. What'll happen is that thing it's in the back of the way that those braces are is they're bolted to the cover, and then there's a locator pad that a lot of times guys will over tighten, and it'll preload the diff a little bit in the up position. That could be part of it, even though that diff is stationary. It shouldn't be a problem, but it's just something to consider. Those things just need to have a little bit of wrist on them with some blue Loctite, and you'll be in good shape. Demonology, thank you very much, brother. I appreciate that. Sour Knight, thank you, brother. I appreciate that too. There it is. $20. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Worried about cavitation. Should I use false neutral switch at the end of the run? 2015 Moroso drag pack oil pan takes 10 quarts. Measure your oil pan. I know that it says it takes 10 quarts, but make sure that it's a true 10 quart pan. A lot of times a 10 quart pan is really like 7 or 8. Now, as far as the false neutral switch, you really don't have to do that. You roll out of the throttle and you should be in good shape with that pan. There's no reason why you would need to run a false neutral. What I would probably suggest, though, is along with that oil pan, it's going to come with a windage tray. What I would suggest doing is verifying first and foremost that it is 10 quarts. And one of the ways you do that is by monitoring oil pressure. If you put 10 quarts in the thing and you get some dips in oil pressure, or you see that oil pressure looks good and then it kind of tails off, that can tell you that you've got too much oil in that pan. So you might bring it down from, 10 to, 8 quarts and see if it still does the same, or 10 to 9 quarts, see if it still does the same. But at your G load, I especially with that pan, I don't think you'd run into any problems with it. I really don't. I mean, you can, the false neutral switch is I don't think you would need it. In fact, I wouldn't even bother with it with my car, because I've thought about putting together a build fairly similar to yours at one point, and that wasn't even going to come up in conversation. So, but again, the main thing is you've got to data log oil pressure. I have, not with Hemis, but I have seen cars as they're running towards this. Okay, so give you an idea. This used to happen with Supras a lot, where you would have somebody do a pretty decent build on a 2JZ, but on those engines, the oil returns are kind of small. They're about 3/8 of an inch. And what would happen is you would sit there and you stab the throttle, and they would, like, especially because we did a lot of roll racing, they would whap, and they would just, like, out of nowhere, the dial-up rate was real aggressive, and it would start to evacuate the oil pan itself. And the oil literally could not drain back to the pan, to the pickup, fast enough. So the Hemis don't really have that problem, but it's just one of the things that you would catch in data logging was looking at oil pressure. And then you would just have somebody in the passenger seat watch it. And you would see the oil pressure come up, spike, and then it would trail off. And the second you started seeing it trail off, it's like, get out of it. And the fix of it was to just enlarge those return lines. So data log, but make sure that you're looking at oil pressure just like you're looking at everything else. You always have to data log that oil pressure. But thank you very much, my man. I appreciate that. Let's see. Messed up. I ran down to Dr. Diff and blew right past everybody here. Let's see. But thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I'll give you a shout tomorrow for sure. Yeah, that car that just drove by, somebody said 392. Goodness. And again, thank you, Chuck. I appreciate you too, brother. Hey, Burnout say, what up, B? Got the arm flex. I like it. Summer Night saying, I just saw a 5.7 Challenger with a wide body ducktail spoiler, blacked out hood today. Nice. Oh, Chuck saying his mod plans are a Pro Charger, long tubes, 392 intake, and a throttle body. You don't need a throttle body if you're putting a Pro Charger on it. Sorry, I said I'd keel for a scat pack. So we're saying 392 goodness. Chuck saying, what else has to be changed for me to install a 392 cam? What else or what all? Depends. So your car, Chuck, is... Oh. Well, if you're a 5.7, I mean, 392 cam is a pretty straightforward swap. I mean, there's really nothing. If you're doing a cam swap, you just install the 392 cam. I would recommend going with a manual cam and the non-MDS lifters. So I mean, you can always do that. But if you're going to be swapping cams, I wouldn't go with another stock cam, especially if you're going to be putting a Pro Charger in the car. So what you might not understand is the stock cam in a 392 is a very good positive displacement supercharger cam. So if you were putting in an E-Force kit into your 392, I would say leave your stock cam in place. It's got a nice wide lobe separation angle that positive displacement superchargers absolutely love. Ramps up bottom end boost response like that. Helps the PD blower carry power on the back end. It's great. But whenever you put together a centrifugal style supercharger, the problem with the wide lobe separation angle is that you don't have the mid-range power that you're going to need to kind of make up for because, you know, of that Pro Charger being on there. It's going to want to push your power further and further and further out. They have a rising boost curve, which is to say that that car is going to try to make peak power basically until you shut up, get out of the throttle. So if you're going to be putting a cam in the thing, you need to put a cam in the car with a tight lobe separation angle. I would recommend 113, 114, something like that. Significantly tighter than the stock lobe separation angle so that you gather up a lot of mid-range power and then carry that power out with your centrifugal supercharger. You can put a Pro Charger on a stock car. They just kind of feel lazy. They're faster, but that sounded healthy. They're faster, but they're not. They don't feel faster. And I've raced. When I had Shalandra, I raced several of them at the drag strip, and not all of them won. So, just saying, if you're going to go with a different cam, go with a different cam. Don't go with a stock cam. Honda Big Turbo. Mopar knees, the language to live by. Absolutely. Chuck saying he's trying to get as close to 600 as he can with the RT. Well, I mean, like I say, cam, blower, and everything else, you can get fairly close to it. But again, like I was saying earlier about the dynos, you got to pick your dyno that you want to put the number on. And I'm telling you, it's going to get real lonely real quick when you're on the wrong kind of dyno and you're trying to make that number. You stop being able to hear. It's funny. We've had guys at the shop when I worked for Pikes that would swear, oh, my car makes 900 horsepower to the rear wheels. And then you put the car on the dyno, like, okay, we're going to do a validation hit. A lot of times these cars were coming in for retunes. We can get into that at another time. But, yeah, I would make 900 to the wheel. Of course it's 900 to the wheels. 815, 805, 790. Yeah. And a lot of times the cars ran great. I mean, you take them out, cars drive and run just fine. But they didn't put down the number that they thought. Look, but it's funny because the look is always the same. It's like it's this level of embarrassment that you just can't escape from. So anyway, it's a Kodak moment. Cheek. Bruce, thank you very much. Say no question. As of right now, just send a little something to show appreciation for you and your knowledge. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Go ahead and buy yourself some Pepsi. Well, funny you should mention that. Yeah, thank you, brother. I appreciate it very much. Catalyst is asking about beadlocks. Are they worth it? Yeah, look, yes and no. I'm not a big fan of beadlocks at the power level that I'm at. I don't need them, so I don't run them. They're a little bit heavier, so I would rather have a slightly lighter wheel and have, you know, a standard install type method. Beadlocks are great. They work like a champ. And I would probably argue that once you get into I would say once you start getting into the 10, not even in the 10.0 range, probably the 960 range, you might want to start looking at beadlocks. But I mean, honestly, the crew that I run with, none of us have beadlocks, and we're all running, you know, low 140s, 130s, 150s, I mean, you're obviously not needing anything in the 150, 60 foot range, like where I'm at right now, like 150, 140, like high 140s. So yeah, you don't have anything to worry about at that power level, but it's the weight, it's the inertia and everything else that these cars are working with, the gearing, all of that would suggest you might need it. But realistically, from what I've seen, I mean, Bravadas, so let me give you an example. The Bravadas with 18s took about 6 passes. Well, hell, I'll show you. Let's go for a walk. Come with me. Let's head out over here. So I always mark the tires in the DBRs. This is the it moved that much. And then it's moved from here, and this was the very first mark. So it's actually moved that far. Still not getting any real vibration out of these. That's not that big of a deal. Hang on. Scoot behind this thing. Take a look at this monstrosity over here. Now, do you need beadlocks? I don't know, but here's my stem. That's where the mark was from last night. So from here to here, that's where it was before. And way over there is where it started out live. And here, there is far and away better. So it's what that basically just means is that it's hang on. What it means is that it's just tire seating in. So at that power level, Bravadas, even at that tire pressure, which is 22 that I run, needs a little bit of seat time or bedding time. I'll typically take them out on the street and hit them pretty hard, and that will solve that problem pretty quickly, especially on the D5s. But on the Bravadas, they do have a little bit more slip. So at that rate, maybe you do need locks. Sovereign saying he's going to check in with Dr. Differential. Very cool. Michael's asking, what tire do you recommend for a stock 392? Depends on what you are doing with it. If it's mainly street driven, the G2 or G2 Tri-5 R2, good tire. They run a little bit wide, so don't try to cheat them with a 305 or you can probably go 275 on a Scat Pack wheel, but don't try to cheat a 305 on a SRT or a 9.5 inch wide wheel. It's going to be a little too wide for that. The old Tri-5 you can get away with because they're narrower. You can kind of get away with it with the SS too, but the Nitto 555 R2 they run a little bit wide from the factory, so just something to consider. Another one, Mickey Thompson ET Street SS is a really good tire. Like that tire a lot. Guns is asking, is a rear diffuser even worth buying on a new Scat Pack? Only if you like the looks. If you like the looks, go for it. Somebody 74, is it Ueg? Mopar sucks. VTEC King bro. VTEC. When that VTEC kicks in. So we're not saying boo. Mopar, no car. So I was asking, do you know how well the Joker cam will work with boost? It should work really well. I'm waiting on my BMR control arms to come in. I'm debating on boost the start of the year. If it's a centrifugal supercharger, it's going to fit right in with what I was just talking about earlier. That cam is a bit of a catch-all when it comes to, now I wouldn't use it with a positive displacement supercharger. It just is not, it's got too tight of a low separation angle for a PD blower. It would lose a lot of boost response down low. But for I mean, if you wanted to go with a centrifugal supercharger or a turbo kit, it'd be a sweet cam for a centrifugal blower. And I mean sweet. 62 Hemi's asking, what's up, Mr. Mason? Do beadlocks require shorter end lengths? Yes. Jerry saying BMR says they help and stiffen bushing in the cradle. Oh, you're talking about the cradle bushings. I've heard of guys doing it. Some guys report a benefit from them. I don't know. At my power level, I haven't seen them. At the power level of cars that I've driven or taken down the track, I just haven't really noticed that it would be a difference, or I didn't notice that it needed something to be different, I should say, in terms of stability. Again, I've driven a lot of mid 9-second cars down the drag strip and just never really noticed anything weird about them. So someone's saying demonology. Oh, Rick's saying, trust me, I'm stumped too. It's a bushing brace. Their best brace. Oh, the bushing brace. Okay. Rick's saying it was all installed the torque specs, not really a violent hop, more like quick skips. I mean, I would have to experience it really to give you an idea. I mean, all independent rear suspension cars may have a little bit of chatter to them, but it just depends on what would be causing it. I'm stumped. I don't understand what would be making it actually wheel hop, other than, I mean, you're at the right pressures. I guess the only thing I can think of, man, is alignment at this stage. So have the alignment checked and make sure they're wearing, you're wearing both sides evenly. But yeah, I mean, I've always run mine at between 27 and 30 PSI and didn't have any issues. Chuck's, thank you, buddy. Saying, glad to be here with UB and our Mopar family. Very sweet. Jermaine, thank you very much. I appreciate that, buddy. Thanks, man. Thank you all very much. And yeah, for you guys that were asking about cams, give Dr. Diff a shout. Like I say, we've got the Sniper cam, Warlock cam. Those are two cams that, for a stock converter would work really well for any NA or centrifugal supercharged application. So, and again, thank you, Demonology. Appreciate it, my friend. Chuck Rice, RT57 Sermon saying MDS, bye. Chuck saying, so full race cam? There's no such thing as full race cam. It doesn't work like that. Full race cam would mean full race cam, full race transmission, full race converter, full race gear, full race interior, full race weight reduction. So no, it's not a full race cam. It's a proper street cam for the application. And really going outside of that recipe is in and of itself a recipe for disaster. I've seen a lot of guys get real frustrated with their Mopars when they overcam them. And it's really easy to do because the Mopar's heads flow unbelievably well. But the problem with heads that flow really well is they have low velocity. It's a tumble port head, not a swirl port. So what ends up happening is too much cam means that the effects of putting a big cam in the car are exacerbated. In other words, instead of it just kind of affecting power down low, it kills power down low. And it's trying to add all this power up top, but you just don't have enough RPM to be able to satisfy the needs of the cam. So That's why less is more. You need to go with somebody, again, that speaks fluent Mopar, that knows what they're talking about when they're giving you advice on cams. And what I've seen, and I know what Dr. Diff that's on the chat now has seen, is that you start talking to people that know LS cams, know LS combinations. They will recommend a cam that is way too big for a Hemi engine to operate realistically on the street. It might work if you had a smaller converter and a different intake manifold and a lot of the things that work well in the LS world. But it doesn't work with Hemis on the street for a couple of reasons. One, Hemi's got to drag this barge of a car around, so you need torque to get that thing moving. And two, you don't want to be trying to spin a Hemi to 7,300 RPM. Just saying. Not unless you got all the good parts. And even all the good parts have a hard time dealing with dealing with Hemi when they don't have a problem dealing with LS. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the LS has significantly better valve train geometry than the Hemi does. And it's got way better rocker design. I mean, it's a traditional normal rocker design as opposed to the offset rockers that the Hemis have. Roller trunnions as opposed to shaft mount. It's, again, the geometry is such that it's harder on push rods. It's harder on the springs to control everything in a Hemi. And so they just don't deal with RPM the way that the LS platforms do with the parts that are available. In other words, in a LS platform, 400-pound valve spring, which is what you're going to run if you're putting a cam in an LS, most are 380 to 400 pounds, will manage 72, 7,300 RPM, usually with no problem. Actually, it'll handle even more than that, but just saying. That same spring, that same 380-pound spring, for example, will not manage anything more than about 66, 6,700 RPM for a Hemi with an aftermarket cam. So you think, well, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal. It's that big of a deal when you start bending push rods. And that's normally what happens. The push rod is the first thing typically that'll go with the Hemi. And you can beef up the push rods all you want, but the problem with beefing up push rods is now you're adding weight, which is something that you don't need. I mean, honestly, if you could get your hands on all titanium valve train in terms of, rockers and, push rods, even with that, I don't know that you would still get to the load values that an LS has with just stock parts. That's how heavy that valve train is. I mean, again, you got a big O intake valve, and all the rest of the stuff I was just talking about caused all kinds of problems for RPM. Sour Knight's laughing. So saying, dyno numbers hurt feelings. Stick to a tracking number and you'll be much happier. That is real talk right there. They're a little off on the horsepower numbers, yeah, to say the least. Sovereign saying, Soul Snatcher looks great on Beadlocks. Yeah, it does. You just won't see it for very long. Tux is asking if the SXT is a 6 or an 8. It is a 6er. Oh, Hemi's saying he took his car to an alignment shop and it had a bent control arm. Could be. We've actually seen, this is, not to, try to scare anybody, but we've seen, if a car was ever on a wrecker, we've seen where wreckers have hooked on to the lower trailing arm and have bent lower trailing arms. It could have been done in transport. And you may not even notice it, that there's an issue until you start really leaning on it. So anyway, I have seen one Hellcat like that. Oh, Sovereign saying it's the 6. Yes, it is. Oh, Rick's just kind of checking back in, saying wheel hops is a series of quick skips, nothing violent. Yeah, if it's just some quick skips, I really wouldn't worry about it. If it gets to, you know, like it sounds like somebody's trying to break out of the back of your car, then yeah, that's going to definitely be an issue. Cal is saying, are those 18x10 Bravados? Yes, they are. 62's asking, do you think the high-tech gasket sealer works to eliminate tire spinning on the rim? It certainly can, yes. The main thing is just making sure they don't use a lot of soap when they're installing the tire on the rim. It's hard to find folks that actually know how to install a higher performance tire on any rim, honestly. But luckily, I don't have any vibration out of these yet. So if they do, I just run them down there and they rebalance them for me. So Michael saying I'm running 1050 on the rear. That's what I've got as my street set. So I'm saying the SXT is all right, but not for me. Dr. Diff saying that the Joker's kind of the go-to cam works well with NA nitrous force induction. It seems the Punisher is growing in popularity. Cool. I'd love to hear about some of the cars that have that Punisher. Haven't heard of any of those yet. Unpronounceable gun something saying should be getting my 392 in factory soon. Charger starting as a daily, but goal is drag. What mods do you recommend? Depends on what your budget is. But obviously, wheels and tires will be the first thing that I'll tell you might want to get first. If you're looking to take the thing to the drag strip, don't even bother taking it on stock tires. They're just gonna go up in smoke. Get you a set of Bravadas and a set of 18-inch DBRs, or something that'll at least hook out of the hole. That's going to make your life a whole lot more fun at the track. From there, it just depends on what your budget is. So Hellcat filter for sure, and then from there, don't worry about cold. I can tell you what not to do. Okay, don't get a cold air. You don't need it. Just get a Hellcat filter for your stock box. Second thing, tuning. The new operating system is actually really good. So I don't think I don't know that a tune would help you as much. And you got to remember, we were running 1150s with just a little bit of weight reduction in a drag pack on Racer X's wife's shaker. So that new operating system is really good. Seat time. Get out there, play with it. Get out there and have fun with it. That's the most important thing. Sovereign's checking in with Dr. Diff. Chuck, thank you again, man. I appreciate it. Mark, what's up, Mason and chat? Jermaine, again, thank you, brother. Mile High's asking, how do you get real numbers from a dyno, or is a dyno realistically considered just a tuning tool? Man, this is a dyno right here. That's it. It's just a tool. Measures things. Tells you how much is something you got, or more importantly, how much is something you don't got. But that's it. That's all a dyno is. I don't like, and I've said this a lot of times, it would be cool if there was some kind of a setting where you could zero out the dyno, and mods would only, and the power would only be shown in a percentage based on a baseline number. But even then, baseline numbers can be misleading. Let me give you an idea. So let's say you take your car to the dyno, and your car lays down, and it's the middle of summer, and your car lays down 300 horsepower. Let's use some easy numbers to play with. And then you go back in the fall and you start doing some work to the car, and the car goes from 300 horsepower to 330 horsepower. And this is in the fall, so you picked up 10%, right? Well, did you? Because think about this for a minute. Depending on your car, let's say it's supercharged, like a Hellcat. In the summertime, your air charge would be lower. So your computer will be commanding a significantly higher timing value. So you lay down your fictitious 300 horsepower, and then in the fall, when you do some work to the car picks up 10%. Well, the car is going to be commanding a lower timing value. So even though it may be making a little bit more power, it's making that little bit more power at a lower timing value, which is to say, what would the power be if you could command the same timing that you had during the summertime? There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on with tuning and with what gains did you get. You can kind of see where I'm going with that. Even when you're trying to make something obnoxiously consistent, you can't make it consistent enough because of modern computer tuning technology. You saw Sierra when I walked back there. Sierra has a mechanical advance system. That mechanical advance advances the timing irrespective of atmospheric conditions. It can be 30 degrees outside or it can be 90 degrees outside. It's still going to throw 20 degrees of timing on top of 14 or 15 degrees initial timing. No matter what, it's going to get about 34 or 35 degrees of timing. Modern computer controlled cars don't do that. And because they don't do that, the gains or losses can be a little bit misleading. So you're brought up and you're taught to, and you're marketed to expect that if you put this part on your car, it'll pick up X amount of power. And unless you do that modification while the car is sitting on the dyno as it has been set up and calibrated, and that dyno run is done in the exact same atmospheric conditions, you're never going to get an actual understanding of what kind of power that mod gave. It'll be close, but it'll never be like as if you've got a mechanically locked out advanced system for your vehicle. So, I consider a dyno only a tool. I hate like hell quoting dyno numbers because I could quote somebody 300 horsepower and then they go somewhere and they put the car in the dyno and it makes 340 horsepower. Well, now all of a sudden I look like I'm sandbagging a number. I don't know why I would do that, but anyway, it looks like your dyno operator is sandbagging a number, or the other dyno operator is trying to tell you what you want to hear. Bottom line is, if you're tuning on a dyno, it needs to be on a loaded dyno, an eddy current dyno. An inertia style dyno is great if you just want to see what kind of power the car is making, but there's no way to load the vehicle. There's also no way to control the rate that engine is ramping up. So the faster the ramp rate, the lower the number can potentially be that it's going to show on the slip. That's a reason why a lot of guys will put the car in 1-to-1. Well, modern cars have kind of steep rear ends. They've got rear ends for fuel economy. So if you put a Hellcat, for example, in 1-to-1 with a 262 gear, it's going to have a 170 something mile an hour run out the back door on the dyno, which can be a little bit dangerous, but that's a way to cheat the number up as well. There's a lot of ways you can cheat numbers up on dynos that guys don't even realize. And so a number from a number from a number, and everybody's so cheeky about it too. Especially when they don't think that the person that they're being cheeky to won't punch them in the mouth. So it's all a shell game when it comes to dyno numbers. That's just the way that it is. If you want to know if whatever it is that you've done to the vehicle has made a difference, get you a draggy and draggy the thing. You know, it's even stated when you're tuning carburetors, you have to have areas where you can go wide open. And you time it. You pick a number. Okay, we're going to start this run at 60 miles an hour. We're going to go 60 to 80 miles an hour, and we're going to go click, click. And if it's less time to get from 60 to 80, then it's making more power. If it's longer, then it's making less power. That is the old school way on how to street tune a vehicle. A lot of people don't realize that before people had just regular access to dynos, you had a stopwatch, click, click, and you had the street. Put the car in third gear, roll into the throttle, and you'd make a sweep. Dynos are doing the exact same thing. It is literally called a rolling road in parts of the world. So that's the reason for that. So anyway, that's why I'm not a big fan of dynos. I'm a big fan of dynos. Don't get me wrong. Again, it's a tuning tool, and it tells you some things too. It'll tell you where it's making peak power. It'll tell you it'll tell you where the car is making peak torque. It'll show you where the power falls off. That graph, there's a lot of information in that graph that you cannot get from street tuning. Period. You just can't. But if you're only getting it for a number, that's a problem. Because again, that number is based on so many different factors that you have no control over as the consumer, and that the operator is highly incentivized to make sure that you leave the shop happy, not leave the shop with that look on your face. You know what I mean? So anyway, hopefully that answers the question. I know it's kind of a around my ass to get to my elbow way of answering the question, but I feel like you need to have all the information on board when you go to have these conversations with guys if you're looking to get a dyno number. It can be very frustrating. I'm trying to shield you from a lot of that frustration, because that is the type of frustration that causes guys to get completely out of the lifestyle, like 100%. You know, they spend all this money, all this time, all this effort on a car, and it doesn't put out a number. And, you know, it doesn't perform as promised, so to speak. And that can be a big problem for guys. And it's just the expectations and the understanding wasn't there to begin with. And that, for me, was a big part of my job when I was onboarding a new client. Tell them, look, dyno is just a tool. I don't even like giving numbers on dynos. I don't want to tell you what the car would make stock, like without us even touching it. To give you an idea, there's a range to it also. 392, the walking around number would be 400 horsepower on that dyno. But the number could be as low as 380 or 385. We've seen quite a few 392s show up and make 380 or 385 with nothing wrong with them. They just didn't make all the power. Every once in a while, you'd have one that make 405, 410, maybe 415. But again, that's different parts of the year, different atmospheric conditions, different setups, different ways that you're reading the power. Wheel sensed mode, another wheel sensed mode, or if you're picking up the RPM lead from a tack lead. There's all kinds of different things that'll screw you up on a dyno. So again, this is all it is. It's just a ruler, doesn't do anything else, and it tells the tuner, tells the operator if that change that they made is taking that car in the right direction or not. That's it. And again, I wish it could be done with percentage points. That'd make life even better. BB's saying, how boring will car meets become once performance cars are all electric? Without the engine, there's pretty much only wheels, tires, and aero mods to talk about. That is not 100% true. So let me tell you how this is going to go. If you've ever been to car meets, first of all, it's a bunch of old farts and bad shorts and funny looking hats and silly shirts sitting around half buzzed off a natty light talking about shit that is like 40 years old. The cars aren't even moving. Most of the time they're staying at bed and breakfasts or whatever, if you're talking about like cruising the coast or something like that. Now, if you're talking about your local Lowe's meetup, a lot of those guys don't even know what they're talking about half the time anyway. But here's the funny thing. You'll be able to talk about batteries and aftermarket motors and tuning, because tuning's coming, by the way. You'll be able to talk about different settings, range hot rodding, and everything that's included with that. there's a lot more to car meets than just the sound of the engines, but they've got a sound all their own. And if you've never heard, oh, by the way, there was a Plaid at the track last night. It went 920 at 149 miles an hour. Sounded like it. It sounded like an old school dynamo, like an old school generator, like that going down the track. It sounded pretty cool. There'll be different sounds to listen to. There'll be different things to listen for. So don't be too distraught. Besides, gas-powered stuff isn't going away. There's always going to be somebody with a Hellcat or a ZL1 or a GT500 at one of these. Be the old fart in 40 years at the car meet. There'll still be plenty of gasoline stuff out there. Oh, Dr. Diff saying, oh, that bushing brace, saying it's weird. It works great, but way overbuilt. It's harder to install, and it's weird. Chuck saying, in local performance shop recommended that I just keep the stock cam with the Pro Charger kit. Yeah, I mean, it's not, you don't have to put a cam in the car to put the Pro Charger on the car. You're still going to pick up your 125 to 150 horsepower to the rear wheels, depending on which kit you get. By the way, that's the difference between a D1 and a regular intercooler and a D1X with a race intercooler. But I wouldn't say you have to put a cam in the car, but if you've ever driven a cammed car, a good cam car with a Pro Charger, there is a difference. There's a significant difference between the two, especially starting at about 4,000 RPM. That's where everything starts to get real efficient. But don't have to spend the money. Dr. Diff saying, way too big? What am I missing? What is way too big? Oh, Mark saying, just finished his 5.7 truck, cam headers, tuned, throttle body, limited slip, 321 gear, true dual. Nice. Rick, I don't know why your car's got wheel hop, buddy. Couldn't tell you. We're working with 18s, 19s, 16s. Don't know, man. Like I say, get that thing to an alignment shop. See if there's anything they can do to maybe help you square that thing up. But I don't know, man. George is asking, what do you think of the 274 comp cam on the 392 Hemi? I don't like that cam a lot. Unless, and this is the twist, you're asking about it on a 392. If you're to take the 274, put it in the 392, and then put an E-Force on top of that thing, that would work out pretty well. That cam has got a wide enough lobe separation angle to where it would work well as a positive displacement supercharger cam. But it is not very good in NA at all. I've driven the 270, I've driven the 274, and they are the whole. Like you wonder if you are effectively losing 40 cubic inches out of that engine. That's what it feels like. So I would highly advise against that cam in that respect. Mark is saying he loves the 5.7. I love me some 5.7 too. Mile High, thank you very much. Saying great info. Thanks, bud. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. Let's see. Appreciate that, brother. Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words. Oh, hang on. Okay. Let's see. Dang, I blew past everybody. I want to scroll back. Pardon me, guys. Bear with me just a second. Oh, Sovereign saying 7,300 on a stock Hemi. Good night. You can still get away with it, but the bigger valve heads, the 6.4 and the 390, or the 6.4/392, and the Hellcats. I don't know. I've heard of some horror stories with those. Oh, Dr. Diff. Yeah, he's kind of saying the same thing I was saying earlier about velocity with the LS versus it's called a tumble port. In fact, 4 valves are by default tumble port as opposed to high swirl heads. Someone saying, I concur, smash the like. Yeah, smash the like. Get that thing in the elbow. Yeah. Dr. Div saying he sent his to 7,400, but that was every once in a while. Yep. Yeah, I don't know if it'll survive it long term. And it's $7,000 for a 5.7 isn't that big of a deal. It's 7,300 for the 392s and the Hellcats that can kind of get you into trouble. Now, that being said, you run enough spring pressure in the right rockers, at least put stand keys on it, you'll be okay. For a while anyway. But you got to have the right springs. Now, I've seen guys with all the right parts spin, have an engine get away from him, spin to 74, 7,700 and bend a push rod, even the good stuff. So, Cows is asking, for the Hellcat or 392, if you install headers and mid pipes, do you necessarily need to change the rest of the exhaust? No, those setups are designed to work with the stock cat back. So no, you'd be in good shape. Oh, Dr. Div says Jarrett. Oh, cool. Yeah, Jarrett's truck runs good. Rick's saying he has no complaints other than some wheel skit, made 6 street passes at the quarter track, only took out launch and chair. It was stupid hot, 92 degrees. Oh yeah, that is stupid hot. 1182, 1185 is not bad. So Sinister's asking, what do you recommend, 17 or 18 for the rear wheels? Any benefits or disadvantages for either one? Yes. So benefits of the 17, they're lighter. Wheels are going to be lighter. Tires have a little bit more sidewall typically. My D5s are, I believe they are 7 pounds per side lighter than the Bravados that you saw earlier with the 18s. That's basically all in the wheel itself. The 17s will be a little bit more forgiving, although even at my power number or power level, that number hasn't been reached yet to where I need something more forgiving, if you will. The 18s are working out just fine. Now, that being said, downsides to the 17. The 17 is going to need shortened end links. So add that to the cost of the purchase. You're looking at about $100 there, plus the install, which you could literally do in your sleep accidentally on your way to take a leak. And there's nothing to swapping those out. The 17s, in some cases, you will need to look at the wiring for your shock as it runs down the length of the tie rods on the rear suspension. You can, with some 17-inch wheels, start to rub that wiring, which will cause you to have the wire break, which is a whole new series of problems that you're going to have, which could potentially lead you to have to rewire the shock. Ask me how I know this ×2. So there's that. But that's a real thing with 17s. Now, what about 18s? Well, 18s are heavier. So there's that. Well, what does that mean at the drag strip? Right now, what that means at the drag strip is I'm losing about 2 to 3 hundredths in my 60 foot, which means that I'm losing 4 to 6 hundredths at the back half of the track, which would have meant that some of my passes on Friday would have been 30s instead of 40s. But we're just out there having fun, and the number is whatever the number is. And so if you're not necessarily number chasing, you just want a set of wheels and tires to go out and have fun with and take to the drag strip, make some no prep hits in Mexico, then that's going to be the setup that I would recommend. You don't need links for 18s, and there's no worries about rubbing wires with 18s either. Bravados are fairly cheap, and that would be the wheel that I would suggest. And any 28-inch tall DBR, if you're going to be at the drag strip, they're not street legal. So for the street legal stuff, you'd have to go with the 18-inch 305/45 from Mickey Thompson. So that's going to put you basically with a square setup with your stock front tires at about 29 and change inches tall. And it's a good setup all the way around. So but just keep that in the back of your mind. When you're looking at the wheel and tire combinations, I prefer the 17, but I'm doing just fine with the 18s, and I'm having a ball with them. So let's see. I'll make sure I'm not missing anybody here. Bear with me, guys. Dr. Diff is checking in with somebody. I must have missed something. Oh, he's talking about Racer X's car. Yeah. Sovereign saying, have yet to see its full potential. Yeah, and you won't until that transmission is beefed up. Rick's saying all 6 passes, didn't do anything with the car, just drove it. I like it. That's the way to do it. Chuck saying, or asking Dr. Diff, are her shifters better than stock shifter in the RT shaker? I'll answer that. Yeah, Barton's really good too. George asking again, maybe I already touched up on this, thoughts on the 274 comp cam on a 392 Hemi? No. I would not do that again. It's very soft down low. You lose a lot of the tip in throttle response, and it's not worth it. If it does make a number, I've never seen one, honest to goodness, make a number with one of those cars either. Dr. Div saying eddy current dynos are stingy. Yeah, they are. He's saying Barton's are great and McLeod's RXT clutch, very good clutch. Chuck's asking, should I unhook my pedal commander before taking it to my tech shop when it's Pro Charger day? No, just set it to slack. Just set it to the zeroed out setting, and you'll be fine. And then just tuck it down in the seat. I mean, nobody's going to go looking for it, so. And it's not going to affect anything on the dyno as long as it's not in like super chill mode. Oh, Dr. Div saying, dyno comment. A vehicle makes what it makes, period. It works both ways. So clients need to know when they want to put a fork in it, so to speak. Have had it work both ways. Mine as much as you can, or stop there. Yeah. Gun saying, hell yeah, I have bad shorts. I'm ready to liking it. Nice. Oh, Chuck saying his performance numbers are higher than Dodge stated on the RT shaker, according to Performance Pages dyno. Been saying they're a little underrated, guys. I wasn't kidding. Sovereign Knight saying electric drag racing will be about how many electrons you can dump into a drive motor to push you down the track at the fastest possible speed and acceleration. It's very true. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how I can rig like a setup where I've got nothing but capacitors. And you basically pull a capacitor, stick the other capacitor in, have the other capacitor charging, and it's like electric nitrous oxide. Launch the car, get to a certain point, hit the button, takes the speed controller out of the conversation completely, and dumps that capacitor straight into that electric motor. I mean, 1.21 gigawatts. I want all that. So yeah, there's some stuff that's going to be coming, believe me. And I can't wait to see what all transpires. Thank you again, Maha Hemi. Appreciate that, buddy. Goldberg saying 1 year ago today, he picked up his 392 Shaker M6. Not the fastest, but there is nothing like the sound of pulling gears with AC/DC, and you come to a stop and the guy next to you gives a thumbs up. Very true. I like it. Fun car, too. Oh, Sovereign saying it's a simplified explanation and there's a lot more in it, or a lot more to it, but in the end, I think that's the bottom line. Okay. Oh, R's asking, or saying, have a ProCharge 5.7 on the dyno, 93 pump tune. Okay. Making 7 to 8 pounds of boost at wide open throttle. Was thinking about using VP Octanium on track days to make it safer. Your thoughts? Well, whether it's VP, Octanium, Boostanium, or anybody else's, octane booster, this is what I'll say. Tune the thing on 93 octane. If you want it to be a little bit safer on race night, run a little bit of octane booster, but do not tune the thing, or street tune the thing for that matter, with any octane booster. The reason for that is because octane boosters work. And if you try to tune and eke out a little bit more power with the octane booster, then when the client decides that they're just going to go beat on the car on regular 93 octane, you end up breaking something. Usually it's a wallet. So I would just say there's nothing wrong with it. By all means, do it. As a matter of fact, it's cheap insurance, but I can tell you this, with my car, this is really just for Sierra and Foxy, just as a fuel stabilizer. I don't even run butane in my car. I've tested it. It worked very well as a fuel stabilizer, but did I gain any octane from it? I don't know. I mean, I was looking at data on my car, and the data on my car looks really sharp. So putting butane in the car isn't going to lower my knock sensor voltage. It's just not. It's just noise. It's the regular stuff that you see knock sensors doing. So, but for you, yeah, I would definitely throw a little bit in the car for race night, especially when the DAs are dropping. For butane, if you're not familiar, if you want to get 100 octane out of 93 octane gas, it's an ounce per gallon. So there's your mix ratios right there. You get a little bit less than that, get a little bit less octane, but most guys like 100 octanes. 100 is like I don't know. It's a satisfying number to have in the car. So Chuck, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Saying thanks for the info, B, and others on this super cool live show. Thank y'all very much. I just want to make the right choices on my Challenger mods. Yeah, the thing is, Chuck, you got to remember something, man. Less is more when it comes to the Mopars. You're already coming into this conversation with a lot in your favor. The cars are heavy, and I get it. Even by old school 60s land barge criteria, they're heavy. So you've got to take that into consideration. Start doing mods to these cars. And a lot of folks want to try to throw more and more they want to throw a lot more cam at it. They want to try to LS their Hemi, but you can't really LS a Hemi. They're two completely different cars, two completely different engines, I should say, two completely different ways of going about getting power out of an internal combustion engine as it pertains to like a 2-valve gas engine. They're just miles apart. And it's because of that there's a lot of confusion. And again, if you take the less is more approach with the Hemi, you'll come out with a car that's extremely torquey down low, makes a lot of mid-range, and that carries the power fairly well on the big end. Again, that's what you need for a car that's really heavy. You can always put a different intake manifold on the car. Go with the Sniper intake. Big cam, lots of valve spring, lots of push rod. If it's a manual car, you're basically already there. Just do the line modification, the check valve, but that reducer valve mod if it's a manual car. Anyway, long story short, you can make a car, you put a car together, it spins to 7,500 RPM. That's not the problem. But again, I mean, you're dealing with a car that's heavy. So gear accordingly. If you got a manual car, you've already got a very aggressive gear to begin with. So you saying it's a 6-speed Tremec. I mean, I would say, stick with what works. Shifters, big time. The line reducer mod, big deal for you. All that's going to make the car feel better, and it's going to be a lot more enjoyable to drive. So hopefully that answers the question, because it's a real common question, especially for guys that have any familiarity with the LS platform. That car will spin to whatever cam you put in it, and the Hemi. And a lot of that has to do with the fact there's a lot more parts for the LS family. Remember that the LS family of engines has a lot of intake manifolds to choose from. The Hemi, you've only got a couple, and they're arguably not the best solution, if you will. So a lot of it depends on what you're doing with the car, but for most of the guys that are just out having fun with their cars, sticking with the stocks with some augmentations is going to be the best route for them. Let's see. Oh, Chuck's saying we can't get E85 in my area, maybe 2 places in the entire state. Dyno tuning is 93 here. Good. And the only reason why I say good is NA cars don't do well with E85 unless you're starting out with a very high static compression ratio. By the way, I'm going to be doing a video, it's just a standalone video specifically on that point. I'm going to be talking about E85. One of the questions that I get a lot more than you guys might think, is would E85 work on my car, or how much power will I get if I tune my car on E85? And you'd be surprised how little power you can actually pick up. And so I'm going to be discussing that. We'll be a little bit tech heavy. We're going to be discussing such mind-blowing topics as primarily equivalent compression ratios. How to calculate that. There's a lot of misconceptions on how to calculate the equivalent compression ratio. In other words, if I've got a 10-to-1 engine and I put 10 pounds of boost on it or 5 pounds of boost on it, what is the equivalent compression ratio? Or that is to say, if the engine were naturally aspirated, how much would the compression ratio be with this amount of air in that chamber? And that'll give you an idea as far as knock sensitivity and how much, what gasoline or what E85 or basically what fuel you can get away with that type of a setup. That'll start to give you an idea for timing and what kind of fuel and timing and everything else you can use. So I'll be going over that. I made a chart. I'm actually kind of tweaking the chart a little bit. It's a chart that got that started off life as a equivalent compression ratio chart for World War II aircraft, and that's where all of these formulas came from. Was from internal combustion, supercharged and turbocharged, I should say, or turbo supercharged, as the correct term is, aviation engines. That's my big deal growing up. I was huge into aviation engines, was a docent at the Hiller Aviation Museum, specializing in engines. So, kind of give you an idea for where my background comes from with all this. So you'll be seeing that coming up in a standalone video. I don't know if I can really do it in a live video, but then again, it almost might be easier if I did it in a live video. I wouldn't have to try to script it out as much. But anyway, it'll help to explain where all the knowledge is coming from. Hemi Burnout, thank you very much. I like the animation. That's cool, man. Thank you very much. I just saw this as I was cruising up here, but thank you, Hemi. I appreciate that, buddy. Mike's asking, if I get the 10.5-inch Demon replicas to replace the stock wheels on my Challenger RT, what's the recommended tire size to fit on there? And will anything rub at that width? So, yeah, so 305/35/20 is the recommended tire that I would throw out there for you. You might look at 295/40 if that's floating around out there. I think that's more of an SV type of a tire, though. The thing is I've never seen the 295/40 on a 10.5-inch wide wheel, but it would probably look pretty good. The issue that you may run into with a 305/35 on that wheel is that the wheel itself is the perfect width, and you don't want any tire bulge with it, especially on a 35 series tire where it's like it immediately comes out and then flattens. It's just, anyway. The tire that looks the best on that wheel is the Mickey Thompson ET Street SS, or the, now you can't get it anymore, Nitto Tri-5. But the Tri-5 R2 runs a little bit wide. And because it runs a little bit wide, some cars run into rubbing issues. Now, I've put together some videos. If you go into my playlist, go into the how-to section, and there is a video of me showing you how to move the fender well in. It's real easy to do, to move that thing around a little bit to where you can fit a little bit bigger tire back there. And this doesn't require any hammering or anything like that. It's just real easy, kind of moving things around. Just, drilling new holes in the fender liner and just taking your Christmas tree pin out, scooting it up, and then pressing the pin in so that it doesn't rub on that thing. You may also need to trim some of that as well. And don't worry about, oh, it's going to look like shit. There's like extra material on that thing. It's almost like it was meant to be trimmed. So don't worry about that. But just check out that video, and that'll kind of help you along with that process. Once you get in there, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You won't need anybody staring over your shoulder telling you what to do. If you watch the video, you'll get in there and you go, oh, that's what he was talking about. And oh, because it's kind of hard to film everything, but believe me, if you can get to that point of it, you're smart enough to see exactly what I was talking about, and you'll figure it out. It'll just tell you, it'll basically tell you what to do just by looking at it. And again, I was just scooting back up through here. Thank you again, Maha. I appreciate the contribution, brother. Really do. Oh, Chuck saying we can't get E85 here. Oh, yeah, I just saw that. Yeah, dynoing on 93. Joe saying can I get away with comp 274 on an 18 8-speed with 100 wet shot, 390 rear diff, long tubes, ported heads, and a 392 intake? What can I expect? Because I've already bought all the parts, just got to install. Well, with a 274 comp with a wet shot, yeah, I mean, obviously all of that'll work. I mean, it's not going to not work. Asking what can you expect? I don't really know what you can expect with it because I've never really messed with a 274, but at least not in that configuration. But I would hope to see somewhere around 530, 550 to the rear wheels. I mean, I hate quoting dyno numbers, but everybody wants to hear it, and I don't really know how else to explain it to you other than 520, 550. Depends on who's tuning the car, etc., etc. Hey, don't forget your plugs too. You need to go with a 7 heat range, not a 6 heat range with that 100 wet shot. Oh wait, yours is a 5.7. So you're probably going to be in the, let me think about this for a minute. 450-ish range, 470-ish range. It's kind of hard. We had a 5.7 with a 274 cam, and that car is the one I'm talking about. And it was just, I mean, yeah, you're going to need a 390 gear with that cam. It was just so labored getting out of the hole. But with a hit of nitrous, a 390 gear, it's gonna to the rear wheels with the cam. I'm just kind of trying to do some membering here. 340, 350 ish to the rear. It's going to depend on the dyno. Let's say 360 just to be safe. 360 with the shot of dope. 460. So 3 or 4. I'd say 450 to the rear wheels, give or take, right in that range. Joe saying it just ordered as 3900 stall. Yeah, it's going to need that too. Cal saying if you're not under warranty, hence the Pennzoil recommendation, can you pretty much use any 0W40? You can use any 0W40 warranty or not. I am a big fan of Mobile One. I change it regularly. In fact, I will probably be doing an oil change on the car this weekend. I need to check and see when I did it last. It may be a little bit too soon, but anyway, as long as it's a full synthetic, you'll be fine. I would never recommend going to a conventional or anything like that. The only time I recommend those types of oils nowadays is break-in oil. That is what I use for break-in oil. Rotella, Rotella 1040 is really good break-in oil. But if you are going to be maintaining your car yourself, you're going to be taking care of it. You know when the oil change intervals are going to be, which is 5,000 miles maximum. Even though the manual says 6,000 miles is your go, no go. Like if you are coming up on 6,000 miles, the next time you get into that car, it needs to be taking it to go get oil or to take to the oil change place. But no, any synthetic 0W40 will be fine. I mean, you just take a look at the MEA specs and you can see right away that they're all very similar with how they react. Pennzoil, I believe, has the highest viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius out of all of them. I believe it's followed, I think Castrol is up there, and then Mobile One's up there fairly close. Those two are kind of in tight running, but all of those oils are really good. You're not going to find one that's better, especially when you're talking about oil change intervals like what we're discussing right now. There is functionally no difference between the two. Now, if you stretch that out a little bit, the longer you stretch that out, the better the Pennzoil is going to look for you. But even then, that's not actually, I wouldn't necessarily say that's always 100% accurate. But again, Mobile One, any of the brand names, Pennzoil, you know the routine. All of them are going to be good. So be confident with that. As long as you're changing oil, that's the most important part of the conversation, is we're talking about changing the oil and we're talking about changing it regularly. Sovereign Knights hanging out with Goldberg. Let's see. Oh, Hemi's asking, have you had any experience with any 392 intake bolts loosening and causing vacuum leaks? Never. Said a buddy of his, a 21 392 had this happen with about 1,000 miles on it. Dealer says this isn't really uncommon. I have never seen that. I can tell you that you can over tight your intake bolts. Ask me how I know about that. I actually had to helicoil one of my holes, one of my cylinder heads in Shalandra. That was a real treat. It worked great, but yeah, putting it back together, I was just kind of going through it, and I guess I just put a little bit too much wrist into it, and it went from righty-tighty to righty-loosey, and that's when I knew things had gone bad. So off to the helicoil I went. But yeah, that's a fun story. But no, I've never heard of that. But hey, it could absolutely happen. Let's see. Oh, Speedfreak saying, hey, you mentioned on E85 you should run a tank of 90 through once in a while. How different tune or on same tune? Different tune. Put your 93 octane tune back in the car and fill it up, run it low on the 85. When you get to the gas station, switch over to your 93 octane tune and then fill her up with 93 octane, 91 octane, basically just regular gasoline. I recommend at least every couple of months. 3 months is going to be a little bit of a stretch. If the car's sitting for any real length of time, I would absolutely recommend, if for no other reason than just to keep the thing from getting eaten alive by the E85. If the car's not being run, you've got to do it every 3 months. No doubt about it. Like that's a no-go situation. A lot of people will argue with me about that. I've been running my car on E85 since, I don't know, whatever. That's fine. But if you've been running the car, that's the main thing. You've at least had some flow going through the car, and the fuel hasn't had a chance to come out of suspension or any of that stuff. The point of it is, if you're driving the car once a month is maybe a little bit overkill, but the car is sitting. I know that with Ford's protocol it's once a month if you're driving the car a lot. I don't know that you absolutely have to do that, but if the car has been sitting for a while and hasn't been run, you have to immediately do that with that car. So, at least every couple of months if you're driving the car regularly. If the car sits for any real length of time, run the car out of fuel, get the 390, get the 93 or 91 in the car, and flush it out then. Just my suggestion. And I'm following the same protocol that Ford gives, primarily because I know and have had issues with fuel. And what I was saying is, I know the problems you can have with fuel quality. And I know the issues that I personally had with E85. So, and I know what kind of issues I've had with this swill that we're calling E10 now. So I know where their problems are, and that's why I recommend doing this. If you follow that protocol, you'll keep everything going strong for a long time. But even the best, so in the recent, okay, I'll give you an example. Racer X's Hellcat Charger, excessive. One of its fuel pumps started to fail, and when you have a car that makes about 1,000 horsepower at the flywheel, fuel and lack thereof can be a very big problem. And a lot of that had to do with that car was always run on E85, and I have a sneaking suspicion that the E85, even though that those are injected engineering pumps and they're designed for E85, even those pumps can run into a problem in that environment. So Roy, thank you for saying, B, my cell phone's at 15% and got to hit the sack. Been fun listening. Good night, brother. Thank you, brother. I appreciate the contribution, man. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my friend. Hemi burnout checking in. $5, message retracted. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that too. Let's see. You get back up here. All right. Oh, Rick's saying he thinks he's going to go try a slight overinflation on the 305 Nitto Tri 5s and see what happens. I've dropped pressure, but not tried a slight overinflation yet. Try some troubleshooting on them. Overinflating will be a little bit better than underinflating normally for that type of a situation. Here's one more thing. I'm assuming that you're using the in-car air pressure monitor. Validate that air pressure with a standalone gauge just to be on the safe side. A good digital one too. Just make sure that the pressures are reading accurately side to side. George is asking, what's the best cam for a 392 Hemi? There is no such thing as a best cam. It all depends on what your needs, wants, purposes are for the cam. What's the combination? For stock intake with long tube headers, which is you'll have to have long tube headers. For that type of a setup, something like my sniper cam through Dr. Differential and Speed, CDO1 grind from Pike's Performance, another one of my cams, work really well, proven at the track. Dyno numbers, I can tell you that on a dyno, the CDO1 / sniper grind will put down roughly 500 horsepower-ish. It'll get close to it. So with no lope at all. You can't even tell a car's got a cam in it. Other cams have done equally as well, with the high roller cam, I think, making the most power, roughly 507 or 510, something like that, horsepower to the rear wheels. Again, on a, on a dyno, but, that's a pretty rowdy cam. And, but anyway, all the more modern, the latest crop, I should say, of custom grinds that I've put together for Doc Diff are all really good. I mean, they're all going to work really well for you. So it all just depends on what you're looking for. Most guys like something with a little bit of a chop to it, and nothing too rowdy, something that's not going to try to, push through the stock converter at lights. The Warlock cam is probably the best compromise out of all of those. It'll be a bump in power above the sniper grind, but won't be as rowdy as, like, say, the high roller is. That's the cam I would put in my car. So let's see. Chuck saying it's a 6-speed. 6-speeds are awesome. Hemi Burt saying, is 390 diff good in an A8 car at the track? It is going to be, well, it depends on the size of the tire that you've got in the back of it. If you're running, so let me put it like this, the 5.7 cars can get away with it because they, like the trucks, for example, they run 392 gears with short tires at the track. But their predictive shift algorithms are kind of put together to that's going on. If you don't have a tune in that car, putting that gear in that car is going to make it go freak out mode in predictive shift algorithm. So with a tune, you can make it work. I would prefer to see a 370 gear, primarily because it's just going to be able to drive around better. The problem with the 390 gear, with the 8-speed or the Nag 1 for that matter, they are buzzy as hell on the highway. You're looking at like $3,000 or so at 80 miles an hour, which by my ass, it isn't all that bad, but from what you're used to with that car, it's going to be pretty annoying. So I would probably suggest a 370 gear if you're going to go that route. But You can go 390, but it is going to require a tune. Shift points are going to have to be altered. Driver command torque is going to have to be played with. There's a lot that it's going to take to get that gear to really work right. You can't, technically, yes, I get it. You can just put the gear in the car and drive it. But to optimize it and to realistically be able to take advantage of what you just put all your money on, you're going to need to get a tune for it. No doubt about that. I will tell you though that they are very snappy. The only thing that I don't like about they do burn through first gear really fast, so just know that coming into it. And it will require a DBR style tire. You'll have to have at least a 28 10 5 17 on the back of that car, 28 10 5 18 to get it to act right. It's going to want to blow the tires completely off the rims in first gear. I mean, it's like whap, whap. It's real quick when they go through the gears. Just watch the trucks. That'll give you an idea for what they're going to act like. Sinister saying, I'm stock, but here in Arizona, we only have 91 octane. Better to be safe to put a couple of gallons of race gas or use butane. I will agree with that. The 392s can be a little bit aggressive, especially with the new operating system. Sovereign saying in California, I see all the pumps is max octane 91. Yeah, I know. Chuck saying, looking forward to the workshops, Beat. Yeah, I need to figure out how to. The thing is, I don't have editing software and I don't have any way to be able to pull this up and show you what I'm talking about or show you what I'm looking at. So I'm just gonna have to talk you through it with the chart that I made. And I'm actually tweaking it because I don't. Okay, so the thing is that equivalent compression ratio is only a bit of a guideline. There's no actual way, because of cam timing. There is, but there isn't a way with cam timing can throw this off a little bit. So there are some boost numbers that I was looking at. It's just basic manifold pressure versus kind of intuitive physics here, where the math has to be able to take into account the loss of air density, which is something the standard formula doesn't do. And nobody really pays attention, even though you may have read books that give the old standard formula of pressure ratio, which is the boost number divided by 0.7. Boost number divided by 14.5 to get to your ATAs, your atmospheres, to then run that number plus your compression ratio and have your ATA plus your compression ratio basically be your multiplier for your new compression ratio. In other words, let's say you had 14.7 to 1 pounds of boost. Well, 14.7 pounds of boost is 1 full atmosphere. So that would double your compression ratio, because atmosphere plus itself is doubling it, as opposed to if you had, let's say 7 pounds of boost, which would be half an atmosphere. So that would be the equivalent of your compression ratio added half again, your compression ratio. So 10 would be 15. And 14.7, 10 would be 20. See what I mean? Kind of working with some easy numbers there for you. So because of that standard formula is incorrect. It doesn't pass the look test. In other words, there are no naturally aspirated engines running around at 15 to 1 compression ratio. So you have to back that math up a little bit. And that's assuming the same air density. You can see now where I'm talking about with the air density issue with, you're not going to have the same air density because supercharging heats up the air, heat dissipates density. That creates the multipliers that you have to put in place to really get the number down to where you can kind of wrap your head around it. Either way, you still get an idea for how the whole thing comes together. And the funny thing is that when I start to explain it, it'll make sense why some cars, like the Mustang, respond really well to E85, but other cars like the 392 kind of don't. And other cars with lower compression ratios certainly wouldn't. So it'll fall in line with some of that, but you might be surprised as to what the actual equivalent compression ratios are. Then you can get into, okay, well, if that's an equivalent compression ratio, what's the equivalent cubic inch displacement? And you can kind of play around with numbers with that as well, and it can end up being kind of fun. So anyway, teaser, the Hellcat at stock compression, right? But the Hellcat with a 9.5 to 1 compression ratio with stock boost being between 10 and 11 pounds of boost has an effective compression ratio of, and again, it depends on the multipliers that you like to use, but around 12.4 to 1, and has depending again on how you want to play with the numbers, an effective cubic inch displacement of 500 cubic inches. So you think of a 500 cubic inch engine at 12.5 to 1 compression ratio, but is running with that cam profile that's in the engine, with that lift, with that valve size, with all of that in play. So anyway, there's some fun playing around with numbers, and you've got to really dig into like your nerd gene to start even beginning to have fun with this. But I love it. I absolutely love this kind of stuff. So in fact, I'll even give you another teaser. If you want to see what that chart looks like, hang on, Chuck, I'm going to do this for you. I'll pull up that chart and I'll just flip the computer around. You can see what I'll be talking about. And take this thing a second to spool up. So be on the lookout for that here in just a second. I think I already touched on Mike G's question about the tires, saying 10.5 inch width, if that wasn't clear. Yeah, and I know all about that because that is the exact same wheel and tire combination that I have on Chandelier. That's my my daily setup is Nitto Tri-5 R2s on Replica Demon wheels. I love the look of that, by the way. But the Tri-5Rs, not so much. And the reason why I don't like them as much is, again, that slight bulge just kind of screws me up a little bit. So, hey, Chuck, by the way, so you can see what I was talking about with that equivalency chart that I'll be talking about. Sorry, this computer, I had to get this thing up and rolling, and here we go. This thing's got a sense of humor all of a sudden. Hold, please. You love it how computers do this kind of stuff. Anyway, this will be what I'll be going over. This is the chart that I made. Hopefully that comes up. So at some point, you can just hit pause and screenshot that. You can start to see what I'm talking about. I got a kind of a glossary to keep me focused as far as what we're looking at, some equivalent cars, what those ratios are, etc. So anyway, when you're an engine nerd and a data nerd, that's the kind of stuff that you do to have fun. So I enjoy that kind of stuff. That's why I get into this. And for guys that, you know, there's always some kind of mystery behind the whole tuning process and all of that. And again, my whole thing with this is it falls in line with all the math that I was learning as a kid when I was fascinated with engines like, you know, any of the old Warbird engines. It could have been the radials, it could have been the inline 12s, all of them. I just was fascinated by them. So I was trying to learn as much as I possibly could about these things, and you know, the whole fuel thing was always a big topic. And so anyway, some other things had come up that had spurred that on a little bit in my head. So And with all the questions about E85, I wanted to say, look, you know, I can tell you, well, it just doesn't work as well, and then move along to the next topic, right? But that's not really good enough. And for some guys are just like, okay, it doesn't work well enough, and they move on. And other guys want to learn why. Like, okay, well, why wouldn't it work as well? Why does it work well in the Mustang, but it doesn't work well in these other cars? And it's like, well, it doesn't have enough compression to deal with it, and let me show you why that is. And so that's why I did all of that. So Rip is saying he finally went to a 2.7 upper. Very nice. From the 3.1. Should run good. Mike's saying, well, don't think either the RT nor my wallet is ready for 305s just yet. So in that case, I'm assuming 275s would fit comfortably on the 9-inch version. Yes, they will be fine. Chuck's asking about 30,000 miles on the RT. Should I put NGK swap out for the original plugs or wasting money? 100,000 is the norm, right? Yeah, most guys don't even change them out at 100,000. I'll put it to you like this. We've got trucks in the fleet. This is no shit, by the way. Oh my God. So talking about spark plugs, it's kind of funny, but we've got work trucks in the fleet. Let's start with mine. Mine's got 133,000 miles on it. Stock plugs. We've got some that are over 200,000 miles, 240,000 miles on one of them still has the stock plugs in it. Runs like a champ. Gets 20 miles per gallon going down the highway. Floor it and it runs great. So yeah, you'll be good. Tux is checking out. Saying, God bless Twin Towers on 9/11 day. Very much so. Absolutely. If anybody on this chat know a lot about this sort of stuff, absolutely. Amen, brother. Chuck's saying the same thing. But I appreciate it again, Roy. Thank you, buddy. Mike's asking, speaking of fuel additives, are there fuel treatments and cleaners that actually seem to work? BG makes one. Haven't used it in forever, but BG makes a good one. I guess with regular use, seafoam might work. I don't know. I don't. Chuck saying Lucas oil fuel additives work great for my Challenger RT shaker. STP and Mag 1 didn't work as well. Yeah, Lucas makes a pretty decent one too. Use top tier gasoline. That's the best way to keep everything clean. You got to remember, a chunk of the gasoline that you put in your car is actually an additive. So, and that additive is a detergent. So, you know, use top tier fuels in your car, and that'll help more than anything else in keeping the thing clean. If you want to run a cleaner, again, B&G made one. It was in a black can with gold lettering. Last time, it's been a while since I even messed with that stuff. But that works well. Lucas makes a good one. I think you have to use it a bit more often though to really get a lot of benefit out of it. But again, if you're using the good fuel to begin with, you'll be in better shape all the way around. Oh, Rick's saying, hey, B, yes, good tip for all of us to verify what the car is saying against a high quality air pressure gauge too. And he has done that. Yeah, and just it's just good practice. You know what's funny is I never do run tire pressure monitors in the race setup. I just use the air gauge, and I don't even pay. I always, for whatever reason, when I'm running the street setup, I never even think to click over to the tire pressure monitor. I just use the air gauge. So, you know, old habits. Joe saying 390 rear diff at 70 miles an hour is 2,700 in the 8-speed. Sounds badass. It does sound good. Rick saying, thanks for letting me pick your brain on the wheel skip. It stumped me. Yeah, I just haven't had a whole lot of issues. Like okay, so Shalandra had a little bit of a wheel hop, but the BMRs kind of helped to quell that. And then I played around with air pressure, and it pretty much made it more or less go away. Other than really soft, you know, just that's about it. It didn't like shake the car violently. Let's see. Ben's asking, hey, B, what's your opinion on the Chrysler M body? Dude, I love the M bodies. You're talking, yeah, the Diplomat, the Fifth Avenue. There was a coupe version of that thing. Love those things, man. There's a guy at the track that's got one and it runs great. Dude, they're freaking awesome cars. It's like an evolution of the B body in a way for a lot of folks because you can still get a two-door with it. So yeah, I love them. Oh yeah, he's clarified. Yeah, the M bodies rear wheel drive. No, I know exactly what they are. They're awesome cars. Um, Love to get my hands on one. I'll put it to you that way. Oh, Chuck's asking if a dyno tune, if in the tune you can turn off the governor. Oh yeah, you can turn off everything in that thing. That's a lot of access nowadays. Oh, Ben, also your opinion on the short-lived R body, St. Regis, Chrysler New Yorker, and Chrysler Newport, 79 to 81 and 81 Grand Fury last full-size Chrysler cars. All of those are cool, man. I like a lot of people talk about the malaise era as though it were a bad thing. I actually like a lot of those cars because I get what they are and I understand what they're not. You know, look, you can't get mad at a Civic for not being able to tow your boat, right? I get why the malaise era cars are what they were. They weren't fast, but they had some styling cues, and you can make anything fast. So for me, it being slow is irrelevant. I can make slow go fast, or I can have a riot with slow. I mean, and here's the thing. Sierra on the draggy is slow. Sierra driving it is a riot because it's traction limited. So fun is just no traction away. In fact, no fun is the result of a lot of traction. Slash is checking in saying long time no chat. Chuck saying, oh, cool. Yeah, Chuck, if you get a chance, just scroll it back to whatever timestamp that was. You can kind of see what I was getting to when I was putting that together. In fact, the final chart after about, and I was trying to think about this because we used to run non-intercooled values up to as high as 12 pounds of boost, but I would have preferred, 12 pounds of boost. Anything more than 12 pounds of boost, depending on the type of supercharger, because that's the other thing, turbos, centrifugal, positive displacement, all of those types of supercharging will have a different air density at the same boost level. So an intercooled turbo at 10 pounds of boost might have the air density of, let's say, a discharge or a manifold inlet temperature of, say, 20 degrees, whereas a positive displacement supercharger with no intercooler might be at 170 degrees. So lots of difference there between, air density. It's the density that matters. So you can have double the air, but if it's double the temperature, you might have half the oxygen available. You that's not a direct correlation. That's just understand that's the concept that I'm working with there. So there might be some tweaks and checks there. Chuck saying tools are tools, charts help us learn. Absolutely. George saying he's got a 2020 Scat Pack, just got a Comp 274 cam, ported Apache heads, Holly Sniper intake, JLT cold air intake, Cook's custom headers, Hellcat lifters, performance push rods, and Springs 90mm throttle body. You gonna try to run this thing to 7,500 RPM? Because the car's gonna want to rev. It's got 116 degree lobe separation, 600-ish lift. Intake center line, I think, is 109 or 110 on that cam. And with that intake, yeah, I mean, it's going to have a very flat power curve. You're going to need a lot of gear to make it punty. I'll tell you that. And it's not that I'm not a fan of the 274 cam, it's not that I'm not a fan of the Sniper intake. It's just you've got to put together combinations that work well together. The 274 and the Sniper technically are going to work well together because it's a wide lobe separation angle with a short runner intake. The problem is that not going to start getting really happy until about 5,500 or 6,000 RPM. That's when it's going to start to get efficient. Before that, you are going to be giving up power in dump truck loads before you get to the part where that car starts actually becoming efficient. So just know that coming into the conversation. Not saying it won't work, but compared to the stock setup, by the time the stock setup shifts will be about the time that car starts making power. So just kind of a word from experience on that one. Oh, Ben's talking about the front wheel drive cars from Ford and GM where Chrysler had them and they didn't. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, if you wanted a hot rod, that's the one. That's the brand you wanted. Doc's saying, so Pop's car spun a cam bearing after damaging a lifter to a bad point. Second one I've seen on Pop's, the block was trashed. I have a 5.7 block. We're putting in a 6.4 crankshaft from a scat pack. Cool. Long stroke, what's pistons and rods would you suggest? Any stock piston rod combo you think would work? He's wanted to do it on the cheap. We'll do a ring gap and should hold 600 to 700 easily. What pistons and rods would I recommend? Not sure about that because I've never put a 6.4 crank in a 5.7 block. But I would say, I mean, that's going to have to be, there's not a stock combination that's going to work with that, I wouldn't think. Other than 6.4 rods and a piston that is the bore size of the 5.7 with the pin location of the 5.7. And at that point, you could bump compression up to about 11 to 1, 11.5 to 1 and really make it rock. But I'm surprised about the lifter. Real surprised about the lifter. Especially with that cam, because that cam is not very aggressive. Thing had to have been spun hard. And then hitting it with a torque storm. Yep. I mean, you could go, if you want to put it on corn, go 11 to 1 or 12 to 1. And if you want to put it on 93, then, you know, come in at about 9.5 or 10 to 1 compression, be in good shape. Chuck's asking, can you explain the stroker mod? Is that a crank swap? Yes, that's when you put a crank with more stroke than the factory stroke into the engine. There's a lot that you have to take into account there. So in this case, you could be looking at, you'll need to run a shorter rod and a shorter piston, or at least a piston with the wrist pin in a different location to be able to pack everything into the same finite area of that cylinder. So that's what a stroker is. Now, one thing you have to remember about stroker motors, they don't make horsepower, they make torque. They make power under the curve. A lot of guys get worked up because they think that the stroker crank, the stroker motor is going to make more horsepower. A lot of times it does not. In fact, I've even seen it go down a little bit because it makes peak power earlier. However, what it will do is it will make significantly better torque down low, and it'll allow you to run a little bit more aggressive cam to maybe pick up some of the power on the big end. But that's what a stroker motor is. It's just use a crankshaft with more stroke than stock. Oh, Rick's letting us know he's going to let us know how it responds to the higher pressure, saying having a 2,200 mile car stumps him. I understand that. Oh, and then Doc's backing me up on the rods and pistons for sure. It has to be changed. Oh, Ben saying that the Murata could have been the next generation of Charger. Yeah, they started moving away from the old muscle car names there for a little bit during that era, and they went with kind of fancier sounding names like Murata and you can, you know, the Aspen, and it was very lifestyle based back then. You know, you could have said the Aspen might have been the new Duster or whatever. They went with these kind of fart smelling-ish names that you know represent, you know, like upper class type shit. So yeah, no, that's where all that came from. Oh, Doc's saying that's our same problem. I didn't think there was a stock combo that would work. Me either. I mean, like I say, the rods. I mean, we know the rods would work because they work with the 392. It's just the piston height would have to. You have to take a look at that. Um, the cam would work fine. The a little bit more duration, maybe, just because you're going to have a higher acceleration rate of the piston on its way down. The way that the intake valve would see it. George is asking, what's the gear ratio on a manual 2020 Scat Pack? 3.92. And with that, guys, we are coming up on the 2 hour and 20 minute mark. So this has been a little bit of a marathon show. But I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to go ahead and check out, but I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Thank you all very much for the contribution to the cause. That really helps me out a ton. It certainly helps me making content and trying to put stuff together for you guys on the, you know, for my fellow nerds out there. Going over a lot of this technical stuff. A lot of guys like that, so I want to try to do a little bit more of that for you. And like I said, just kind of walking in lockstep with what a lot of the requests have been based around E85 and why E85 works in some cases and doesn't in others. So I wanted to bring that to you guys as well. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Love each and every one of you guys. Could not, would not do this without you. Thank you again for choosing to spend your time with me. Love hanging out with you guys. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. Miss you, Ray. Love you. And we will check y'all on the next one. And that is a wrap. Adios.